Knockbreda Parish Church stands on a prominent site looking over the whole of Belfast. It's unusual in that it has no saint's name attached to the church, and Knockbreda itself tells a story about two parishes that no longer exist. Norman Weatherall tells us the story.
In the 1660s, there were two parishes in the area, Knock and Breda. Each had a church in the Middle Ages, and they're recorded in a papal taxation roll of 1306. But by the 1660s, both churches seemed to be in a very decrepit state. Certainly the one at Breda was. The main church for the area then was at Knock. In the early 18th century, Arthur Hill decided to create a park, Beaver Park. And to do that, he built a wall round his estate. And since there was a village, Breda, within that area, he evicted the tenants and created a new village outside the wall, Newtown Breda. The only sign today of the old village is the remains of the graveyard within the Beaver Park. The new village obviously needed a church, and Arthur Hill's mother, Lady Middleton, offered to pay for the building of the church. There had to be a kind of local referendum, as it were, as to where the church should be located. And Lady Igram, a very influential figure in the Dundonald area, wanted the church built near her end of the parish. But popular opinion favoured Newton Breda. And Newton Breda won, if you like, because the bishop and the archbishop agreed with the decision. Lady Middleton paid for the building of the church, and her son, Arthur Hill, gave an acre as a site for it. The church was consecrated in the summer of 1737. The architect of the church was Richard Castle, or Castles, a foreign gentleman, who was the most significant Palladian architect in Ireland in the first half of the 18th century. Perhaps his major success was Leinster House in Dublin. The interior of the church originally was, in some respect, different from what it is today. In the centre of the aisle, there was a three-decker pulpit, the Georgian feature. And the chancel behind it, where the altar was really obscured by this huge pile of woodwork. In 1883, a significant change was made. The old chancel was demolished, mostly, and a new chancel built, designed by Belfast architect Sir Thomas Drew, architect of Belfast Cathedral. And this three-decker arrangement, of course, ceased to exist, and we have the arrangement today with an altar behind a rail there. There are two transepts, semicircular, one on either side of the nave, and the one on the north side was the pew that belonged to Beaver Park House. It was the squire's pew, and he was responsible for its maintenance and its furnishings. Actually, when the Beaver Park was sold by the Hill family in the early 19th century to the Batesons, that included in the sale price the pew. It was comfortably furnished, as I say. There was a fireplace there. In fact, the fireplace was there until the 1950s. And I imagine a servant came over from the big house in time on a Sunday morning to light the fire. The present arrangement of seating, of course, is modern. But in that transept, there are memorials on the wall to members of the Bateson family. In fact, most of the stained glass windows in the church are Bateson. But there was a Belfast merchant, Robert Atkinson, who was a representative for various breweries. And he was very generous, actually, to the churches in the area. And when this new chancel arrangement was made in 1883, he paid for the stained glass windows in it. And there's a fourth window by him as well. There are various memorials on the walls. The most significant one is in the chancel, and it's the one put up by the third Viscount Dungannon, the last Viscount Dungannon, a hill. He commemorates Arthur Hill and the various generations, drawing particular attention to the fact that one of Arthur Hill's daughters, Anna, married the Earl of Mornington and became the mother of the Duke of Wellington and the Marquis Wellesley. He's very proud of that because, in fact, the lettering of Wellington and Wellesley's name is much larger than most of the other. The building is a very plain classical style. Its west front is perhaps the main architectural feature, and it has a door case which is known as a Gibbsian door case after James Gibbs, an architect, an English architect. Knockbreda Church remained a village church. It was the graveyard that was more important in a wider sense. It became apparently quite a prestigious place in which to be buried. And rich folk from around the area and from Belfast chose to be buried there.